Welcome back to the MLS Net Boys podcast. It's been a while. My name is Chase. I'm here with Jacob. How have you been in our
time away?
Yeah,
from
our
the mics.
extended break. I don't even want to say holiday break because
we used that excuse last time.
It's
it
been
didn't
longer.
really. Yeah, it's been good. I think we've been gone since the last episode. Actually, we've been gone longer than we were during the Christmas New Year season.
Yeah, it's
But-
been a while. It's been full of life changes and whatnot for me, at least. Moving to a new place and getting all settled in. It's been difficult cutting out some time, but here we are. We're back again, ready to chop it up.
Ready for 4 hours of uninterrupted MLS content.
Absolutely. The only interruption we have is going to the bathroom and
Awkwardly trying to jump cut it so we can resume a conversation.
I was gonna say making chocolate cokes, but
Next time we got to do that. I'll bring the syrup.
we just stop mid podcast and just
you hear the glass rattling with the spoon.
we don't even cut it out. We just stand up and just leave. Oh man. Well, Jacob and I haven't seen each other or talked at all since the last podcast. Been zero communication, so expect us just to go over every minute piece of news and detail, like the fact
In our personal
that,
lives.
like the fact that Matthias Pellegrini has left New York City FC for Velez Sarsfield. What are your thoughts on that? This is how we're getting into this episode. We're just gonna dive into the nitty gritty.
Wasn't that the Thiago Almada team? Or am I just stupid?
I have no clue. Honestly, I'm just looking at a random Wikipedia page right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It would fit the bill.
I don't know. Quiet off season or loud off season? I feel like in terms of big moves, I feel like it's been relatively quiet. But in terms of activity, there's been a lot, if that makes sense.
It's been like a roller coaster of an off season because there's been these flashes in the pan of some weeks you get just stormed with news and not necessarily big moves. I think all the big moves were pretty early in the window. But yeah, just like a steady flow and then occasionally a big spark of a move. But I'm excited for these last 2 weeks of the off season. I think it's going to be fireworks all the way up till the end of the off season and the beginning of the MLS season.
I think what's been most surprising for me is the moves that haven't happened in terms of departures. When you think about Denny Bwanga, who was rumored to leave, he even kind of added smoke to those rumors when he was being interviewed in France. Coco Carrasquilla, I thought for sure we both did would be gone.
I thought he was going to be gone after the first week after the season ended.
Yeah, Thiago Almada seemed like he'd be gone. Duncan McGuire should have been gone 3 times, and all those players have remained in MLS, which is interesting.
Do you think that has, how do I phrase this, something to do with the health of the league? It seems like these more valuable players are being held a little bit tighter by these MLS teams, and they're waiting for the right number now or the right team. I feel like MLS is becoming such a feeder league. They're a lot more particular about where they send their players to. They're not just kind of letting them go anywhere for whatever amount of money as long as it's a profit. They're waiting for the right number, the right team. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, and I have no problem with that personally. I think we both realize that MLS is, like you said, becoming a feeder league. It's not going to be, at least I'm guessing it's not going to be the top league in the world ever. And it doesn't have to be. I think that's...
it's already the best league in the world. So
in terms of my own opinion, it's the best league to watch and to follow, obviously. But it's, the game is so different and it's so worldwide. Like we said, I don't know, there's lots of successful leagues that aren't so forth just a Big Five league in Europe, for example. You got the Dutch league, you got the Portuguese league. You can have successful...
just about every league in the world is really a feeder league except for probably the Premier League, Bundesliga, and La Liga. I'd say are probably the 3. Maybe Serie A as well. And even within that, you have like every team in those leagues are feeder teams, except for like
you have
maybe 5 to 10 teams in the world that aren't. So it's not a bad thing to be labeled a feeder league. I think if anything, it's a sign of growth that we've graduated from retirement league to a feeder league in the eyes of most people.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. And anybody who's still calling MLS like a retirement league has lost the plot. In 2024, that's definitely not true, no matter what snarky Arsenal fan guy who wakes up to go to his bar and watch Arsenal on NBC says.
Goes to his local pub.
Just puts on the shirt by himself or just watches it at home while eating cereal and
puts
then
on his
doesn't talk to anybody about it.
What are those like the paperboy hats, like those weird
berets? the guy like Jamie from Mythbusters,
Jamie Heineman, yeah. Old walrus man himself.
Oh man,
yeah. Anyways, we wanted to, it's getting close to the season. We're about 2 weeks out from the start. About the timeline of last year when we did our first couple episodes. It's been officially a year since we started this podcast.
Has it? I was wondering. I didn't look back and check though.
It has been because we did our first episodes in January last year.
Dang.
Not including the first session where we didn't post the episodes that didn't record right.
It's a good practice run.
Yeah. But it's about time we get into some preseason predictions. I think we're going to do our conferences like we did last year. We'll break it up into 2 episodes. And it only felt right to start with the Eastern Conference, considering their Messi. Just to talk about Messi, considering in all reality, this is the strongest conference right now. You can't really deny it at this point. There's more teams in the East. It's more exciting to watch the Eastern Conference teams. Overall,
unless you're a DC United fan.
Overall, it's a fun conference. We wanted to go down the list, talk about each team, some of their transfers this offseason. Maybe some things that we see they still need to do, something they might still do, and then give a quick prediction on where they're going to finish. So where should we start, Jacob? What do we go in alphabetical order? Do we go based off of last season's standings and work from the bottom up? I think. What do you think?
I'm an alphabetical guy, so
type A. I like it.
So there's no better place to start than Atlanta. And like we kind of mentioned, I feel like their biggest notable news is the non-subtraction of Thiago Almada. Without him in this squad, the attack, everything becomes a lot more rough. They're not a bad team by any means, but Almada's what changes them from a contender to more of a middle-tier team, in my opinion.
How about the absolute blow of losing Ezekiel Barco?
Really? Is his loan finally over? Because he hasn't been there for a while.
He is back at River Plate officially.
Okay.
They've lost not too many players. Santiago Sosa, Ezekiel Barco, Franco Ibarra,
Derek Williams.
Williams.
They added him. Sorry.
Yeah, they added him in. I don't know. This Atlanta team, I think the biggest miss for them this offseason is not holding on to Miles Robinson. Letting him go is huge, but like you said, the fact that they still have Thiago Almada, even if it is going to be for half the season or however long, that's going to be huge. That's going to keep their attack ticking. I think they'll be fine there. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of handle things defensively this year, though.
Yeah, I agree. If you lose Miles Robinson, to me it has to be like selling him to Europe or getting a transfer fee for him. Losing him to like a direct conference rival, it's got to sting, honestly.
That one is rough. But on the other hand, when you got Garrison Tubbs coming into the fold,
from Wake Forest University.
From the Wake Forest Demon Deacons.
They added a player from Oregon State, actually. That one hits close to home for us. So
Who did they bring in from Oregon State?
Javier Armas. I don't know. I don't go to OSU soccer games.
Is that Chris Armas's nephew or something?
Maybe. I mean, so in theory, they have a replacement for Miles Robinson with Stian Gregerson, who came from Bordeaux in the top tier of France. So, I mean, with like an international center back like that, we've seen a lot of hits, we've seen a lot of misses in MLS. As long as he performs at an adequate level, I think they'll be fine, honestly. They had a Josh Cohen, the goalkeeper who was playing in the Champions League, actually, for...
He's like the long-lost twin of, like, Matt Turner. Like, their story is very similar. Like, just kind of grinded it out, like, waited for their opportunities, always doubted, and then, yeah, made it big.
Made it big.
He's
And
playing
now
for Israeli side, Maccabi
Haifa.
something like that. Yeah, I remember hearing that guy's story when he was playing in the Champions League, and then didn't hear about him after that at all until this signing. So, to me, a little bit of an unknown quantity. I think, there's some weight with his name because of the story that comes with it.
But he came from Europe.
He did, and that makes him an amazing player. I don't know. I honestly haven't even really looked into his stats at all, so I don't know much about him. I don't think anybody keeps stats for the Israeli league, honestly. So
Yeah.
I looked up his name on FBref, and it just says forbidden file request.
So honestly, that kind of wraps it up for me for Atlanta. We can talk about real quick where we think they'll end up, and I think I'd like to identify, too, their top 3 players, just so we can do that for each team, giving everybody a picture of what they're dealing with. They also had a Dax McCarty, too, in free agency.
That is a big pickup for
which
them.
was solid.
I think we talked about that a little bit last time, right?
Curious to see how he holds up being like 37, 38 on the turf. I mean, he's going to be used more sparingly.
Yeah.
But
Definitely a locker room presence for them.
Yeah. For me, when I look at their roster, Yakumakis, Thiago Almada, probably, Caleb Wiley.
You don't think Jean de Silva is going to be that guy for them?
He was good, but I don't know. You're right. I'd put him in there instead of Caleb Wiley.
I would agree. Those 3 guys. Last year they finished 6th place with how many points? They were on 51 points, 66 goals scored. Where do you have them finishing this year?
I got him in 5th place this year.
You haven't been improving on last year's form.
Yeah, I don't know. Atlanta gets things done typically, and I root for their downfall. Actually, you know what? No, I'll switch them. Actually, I'll do some rearranging.
I have them in 7th place. I don't see them having a huge fall off, but I see a mild regression from last year. I think they might even be around like a similar points tally. Like, I think Giacomakis was amazing last year. I think he's only going to be better this year. But they're going to need to build up a bank of points this first half of the season before Almada gets sold, because he's definitely going to leave. I would be amazed if they're able to keep him through the whole season. So I think 7th place, still in that playoff spot. Not guaranteed a home game though, but at least in there, in the fold. I don't think they're gonna drop off that far.
Yeah.
What about you? Where did you rehash them out at?
I'm gonna put them at 6 actually, just one spot ahead, but
keeping them in 6th place. Yep. Perfectly reasonable. I don't have an issue with that, because there's teams that are far worse than them. Even with Atlanta losing Miles Robinson and possibly Almada, I think they still are, a little bit ahead of some of the other teams below them.
I'd agree.
Who else we got? Who's next on our list?
Who is next? In terms of the alphabet, that leaves us with Charlotte FC. And Charlotte loves just poaching us up here in the Pacific Northwest. Their biggest additions, obviously, was David Bingham and assistant coach Miles Joseph. So,
Hey,
That's
man,
conjecture, of course.
some big moves there.
Charlotte is interesting. I mean, last year I definitely remember us sitting here talking. I can remember it very vividly of us saying, I mean, they got Enzo Capetti, but everywhere else on this roster just like doesn't scream like, wow, this is going to be a team that does damage. They did get rid of both Karol Swiderski and Kamil Jozwiak, so they freed up a lot of space. Question is, do they adequately replace that? I mean, Jozwiak is not going to be too hard. Swiderski was a good player for them, though. So,
And I don't blame Swiderski for leaving, honestly. I mean, he had been there. He was probably their best player. I don't know. I have faith in this team I think they're still going to come in with some big signings. I mean, losing Swiderski and Jozwiak, that frees up 2 DP spots. So, Swiderski is a good player. Jozwiak had 0 output. So I think if they at least hit on one of these guys, they're going to be around a similar spot as they were last year. Last season they finished barely in the playoffs. They're in that 9th place spot, 43 points, 45 goals scored. What do you think? Where do you think they're landing at? Do we even go? They have a very short list of transfers, actually.
I was going to say, I'd like to cover.
They brought in a guy from their second team, Chituru Odunze, and then they signed a Brazilian U20 international, João Pedro. So kind of an unknown quantity there. And then, of course, like you said, David Bingham coming in as some goalkeeper depth.
And a left back, too, it looks like. I'm going to butcher the name, but it looks like Jir Joronen, Finnish left back from League 1. But, I mean, honestly, a lot of changes. Like, you lose your two of your better players-ish. Definitely your best player in Karol Swiderski. But they have a new head coach also. Dean Smith comes over from England. He's going to bring a real salty dog mentality, you already know.
Did you see his interview where he basically just says, like, these aren't my DPs? Like, that was, like, one of the first things he said, like...
No, I just remember
great way to start your tenure at a club.
I remember his first... So that must have been his first interview, yeah. I watched a video, it was like right when he signed it. It was like his message to the Charlotte fans. And he's like, we want you all to come out here. We're going to put bums in the seats. We're going to put on a show. Or it was like something like that. I was like, okay.
I'm not so sure I'm the biggest fan of him as a coach. I don't think he's going to light the league alight at all or anything like that. But, I mean, if they hit on a couple signings, and like we saw, I mean, we've seen with Phil Neville and Portland, he's, the head coach can have some connections. So maybe old Dino brings a couple of lads from, League One or the championship. Man brings over Connor Chaplin or something from Portsmouth.
I think Miles Joseph was a good hire for them. Honestly, though, I think
that's honestly a big pickup.
We've seen a lot. Not to make this about the Timbers, but we've seen a lot of coaches come over from other leagues who don't have the experience and then not do great. They have a tough time adjusting. And somebody like Miles Joseph, who has a ton of experience with Portland and RSL and Orlando, can really provide a steadying presence. So I think that's good. You know what's weird? They spent so much money on Bill Tuiloma last year, and that guy is buried on the depth chart.
Not anymore. Once Dean Smith gets in the door, he loves a good free kick threat from center back.
I was gonna say it's
not like finishing off corners, but taking the free kicks himself.
It's almost worth it just to have him there, just to bang in some free kicks. That guy is unreal.
He's like that one guy everybody has on their bench in FIFA, like that he's useless everywhere else except for like just free kicks.
No, I agree.
Where do you got them finishing at? Do you have them improving on last year or getting worse?
I got him I got him. I don't know if I'd say wooden spoon. I got him worst in the conference. I got him 15th place. I mean, star players. They got Enzo Capetti. I can't really identify. Vargas was all right for him. Ben Bender has been solid. I mean, Ashley Westwood was good too.
I would agree if you look at the roster as it's currently balanced. If they get 2 big signings in the door, that's what I'm kind of banking on here, and I have them at 8th place in the conference.
Wow, that is optimistic. I mean, that's not far off from where they were at. So
I feel like the vibes with Charlotte are improving.
For me, it's more, I think the other teams are better, I guess. I don't think they did it as much as some of these other squads. So
yeah, there's a couple teams below them that I could see above them, but I just have a feeling about Charlotte. They've kind of been on this slow rise like year after year, and it's not, I mean, they're not getting a ton better, but
you feel about Charlotte, it's like the opposite of me. How they're fairly new. This is going to be the 3rd year. You have this hunch that they're going to like be destined for greatness. You always talk about like the off the field like things. You're a real sucker for them. In the same way, I'm a sucker for the Chicago Fire, which is our next team. And man, these guys have been disappointing, man. 1 playoff appearance in the last decade. Their last playoff win was in 2009. So I was 9 years old that year. I was going into the 3rd or 4th grade.
Man.
But some good moves, actually, from the Chicago Fire. Go ahead.
They've got a lengthy list compared to most teams, actually. Doing a lot of moves with the Swiss League. This for some reason, I don't know why.
I'm pretty sure it's FC Lugano. I'm pretty sure is the team that they're linked with.
They signed 2 players from there.
Yeah, so they got a new center back, Salquist. They got Andrew Gutman, who's actually from the area. So
I would say that's their best signing of the year so far. That is huge because that guy is. I mean, there's not a huge depth of left back quality in the league, so it's not saying much saying he's top 10 left backs in the league.
I'd say like top 5.
He's close. I don't know. I think there's maybe. It's tough. It's a tough.
Not the best, but like 3 to 5.
He's in there somewhere.
But lots of.
He's no Zarek Valentine though.
Oh, maybe not. They got Shaqiri still. Brian Gutierrez is solid. Chris Mueller was injured for a large portion of last year, so they'll have him back as well.
Almost feels like a signing in its own.
Yeah, but the big move up top, they got their man, Tom Barlow. I'm just kidding. They signed, his name is, do you know how to pronounce
Hugo Cupers, something like that.
They spent a lot of money for this guy, the Belgian striker who had a pretty solid year last year. They spent, about 10 to 12 million for him. It's 10 million right now. It could rise up to that. It's a club record signing. He's playing in the Belgian league, and he had 64 goals and 25 assists in 126 matches there in the last 3 seasons. He won the Golden Boot in 2022 to 23 with 34 goals. And this season, 17 goals, 6 assists in 34 matches. Really good numbers, and having a good number 9 for them is going to be huge. They thought they had it with Kasper Scherbilko, the former Philadelphia striker. That move didn't really pan out. They're looking to move on from him, which would be a good thing for both parties. And then they even got, I wouldn't say reliable, but they got a decent backup in Tom Barlow. He shouldn't be your starting striker. He won't be, as Red Bull fans know, but I think they've done good moves, honestly. So you look at their best players, I'd put Chris Brady, Andrew Gutman, Kellen Acosta. Looks like he's signing there, which would be a solid move for Chicago as a number 8. Brian Gutierrez, I'd put that as their best three. Shaqiri can be all right, and then their new striker, Hugh Pears.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to hinge on that new striker. They need somebody that can put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
I mean, Acosta in the midfield is going to be good for him. he's going to. I think he'll be good. I think he needs to be at a club like this where he's the main guy, like doing that like number 6 role, which he wasn't really necessarily doing at LAFC, and
he's going to have
fell
more
out of favor as the main guy there.
He's going to have more of a leadership role here. He's at the stage of his career where he's gotten a lot of national team experience. He's been successful in the league. He's helped and led good teams, and that's something Chicago needs. I don't think this is... I mean, there's still work to do. This was a pretty bad roster last year, but hugely improved. If I was a Chicago fan, I'd be feeling much happier. I think it was the last time we did this podcast. They just had announced they signed their GM to like a huge extension.
They were talking about going to their open house at that bar.
At the bar. They had just signed Frank Klopas, their emergency manager. Nothing was very optimistic, but they've put some good work together, I would say. I'm going to put them at number 9. I think they'll get to the playoffs in that last wild card spot. And I don't know. I mean, I can see them sneaking up, not to like a top 5, but I can see them getting between 9 and 6. But I'll go number 9.
They finished last season 13th on 40 points.
And they were in the playoff until the last
they
day.
They're 3 points out of playoffs. So yeah, they were fairly close. I'm putting them at 10th, just barely missing out on the playoffs. Not by much though. I think it's gonna be really similar to this past year.
Another disappointing year in Chicago.
And I love all the moves they've had. I think the striker will probably be good in the MLS. I think he'll have an adjustment period, and I think they need... I don't know. It's going to be a lot of how do him and Shaqiri mesh together. Like, if they mesh together well and they can create a good pairing, I think they'll do really well. If not, he's not going to get any service. He's not going to do too well. I don't know. I just have... And just it's the most Chicago thing ever. Just to...
Making moves that seem like solid on paper, and then it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, I like any of... If this same roster was labeled like Orlando or something, I'd be like, yeah, this is a freaking awesome like
off-season.
Yeah. This team's going to be like top 5 or something. But for whatever reason, because it's Chicago, I have them at 10th.
And I think that's warranted based off their history. We need to get them back to their glory days. And I'm not going to go way back when they had their actual glory days, because that was pre anybody who is listening to this podcast or watching. But give me like 2017 Chicago Fire, Nemanja Nikolic, Schweinsteiger, Dax McCarty. That was a fun team. David Accam, who was in the Nike Academy. Those were good times watching Chicago. So
that was. Who do we got next?
We have... It's only big clubs these days, man. Who do we have next? We have the mighty, the historic. Not really historic. We got the Shield-winning FC Cincinnati coming in off of a successful season, but losing in the most heartbreaking fashion.
I cannot believe... We talked about it already. A historic choke job they had at the end of last season. You can't help but just blame Matt Miazga for that.
Like, going in and fighting with the refs, or just, what was he like, yelling at the refs or screaming?
Like,
I don't want to
breached the referee locker room, like broke into it. Just I don't know what he did in there, but
and they won that game, so I don't. Yeah, like, why does it matter?
Menace, like. Oh man, but other than that, this Cincinnati team, I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings about them. I thought they were absolutely exceptional last year, and they've really only had good moves, but at the same time, I want to say kind of sideways moves. Like, the moves they've made so far this offseason don't move me in the direction of like saying they're like any better than they were last year. If anything, it's kind of a lateral move. They brought in Miles Robinson, of course. going to take Yerson Mosquera's spot in the center back. Older, more experienced. We'll see how he kind of fits into their system. Corey Baird, kind of just a role player to fill in those kind of front spots. Kip Keller, bringing in the guy who likes to pass to the other team. And then as of yesterday, they signed Pavel Bucha, a midfielder from somewhere in the Czech Republic, I'm assuming.
Victorica Pleasant. You don't know that club?
No. I don't know much about this guy either. But if they're bringing him in to kind of pair with Nwobodo, I think it's a good move, but it still is another move that I don't think puts them over the edge.
It's more of a, he'll assumingly slot in with Nwobodo, but he kind of takes over for Junior Moreno, who actually left the club and is rumored to be going to, I was somewhere in the Middle East, I forget, but he does not look like he's coming back. You're right. I mean, it's tricky because I agree with you. I think a lot of these moves are lateral. It's good that they did them. Obviously, you lose Mosquera and you get the best possible center back on the market in MLS. That's really no, Dario Zuparic. So it's good work. I'm a little more, I don't know. The Corey Baird move I think is really good work because for one, I mean, we kind of talked about this, but Brandon Vasquez last year was good, but not like he was in 2022. So I look at that season more of like an outlier and not something that we'd expect Corey Baird to do. So for me, I think that's solid. And I mean, this is a team they didn't have to do a ton of work, honestly. They won the Shield. Of course, age and all these things go into consideration, but they get depth. They need somebody to slot in for Arias. So I'm high on this team.
I am too. I mean, it's hard not to. I don't see them winning the Shield again. I don't see them topping the East, actually. But I mean, as a reminder, obviously they finished first place. I don't remember how many. They had 69 points. Scored a boatload of goals. Scored 57 goals, which isn't even the most in the league. So I mean, they play a fun, attractive style. I like the team. I like the roster they have. But they're also going to be spread more thin this year. They got Champions Cup. They have Leagues Cup. They got U.S. Open Cup. And then they have MLS on top of that. So I don't think they necessarily increase the depth of their team enough to even compete on all those fronts. So it's going to be interesting to see if Pat Noonan hones in on one of them or if he feels like he needs to, kind of spread the wealth. I almost feel like since they won the Supporters Shield and they crashed out of MLS Cup in such a tragic style, I think he's going to put a little bit more resources into the cup runs this year, as long as he's still kind of in the top half of Eastern Conference and then gets that home game, and then go balls to the wall for MLS Cup.
Yeah, I agree. Looking at possible additions, they're targeting a right wing back, which would slot him perfectly on that opposite side. His name is Luca Orellano. He played at Vasco da Gama and in Argentina. He's young, and they're looking at getting him on loan, so he'd fit right in on the wing back spot. And another move that I mentioned, or that I didn't mention, but it fits in with the bill earlier, Alvaro Barreal has not gotten a transfer abroad. That was publicly known that they wanted to get him a move and send him on his way. He wants to go to Europe, but they'll have him for a little bit longer, which is, I think, huge for them. Yeah,
I think the fact that they held on to that guy and then, looking for a right wing back to fill in there is going to be huge for them as well. I don't know. I like this team a lot. I have a hard time not liking them. They do everything right. Their front office is amazing. Their coaching staff is amazing. They have a great identity. But I don't think they're going to sink as much resources into the league this year. I have them finishing third.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I think it's going to be a tight third. It's going to be tight, those top 3 spots in the East this year.
I think that's solid. I got them at first place again. And I think that Bupenza, Lucio Acosta, Nobodo, Barreal, Miazga, Robinson, those are all top-tier players for their position in MLS. So I think they'll be able to perform again. So I'm going first place again. Not sure if I'm giving them the Shield. I'm kind of leaning towards it, but I think they'll be top in the East.
No Shield. Who in the West beats them for the Shield then?
I think somebody can do it just because, like I said, I think the East will all just nick at each other with points, and it'll be much more evenly dispersed. Whereas
Colorado Rapids, your 2024 MLS Shield winners.
Like, I think there's like 3 to 4, maybe even 5 could be elite teams in the East, whereas in the West, I'd say 2 that I would say are elite, at most 3.
Yeah, the East, when you look at them, like the top, really the all like guaranteed playoff spots, like 1st through 6th or so, those are all teams that I think if you drop them in the West, they would probably win the conference or be 2nd place.
That's what I think too. And I mean, we saw with St. Louis, they had that crazy, strange, record-breaking year. And I think a more competent team, such as an LAFC, if they do their work right, they're not going to be in 50 million competitions, reaching finals and losing them. And if they focus on the league, they can win a Shield.
You know what that just reminded me of randomly that I was thinking about the other day? Is St. Louis's like amazing run to win the West was almost like, to me, identical to Leicester City winning the Premier League. It was like an off year where every big team in the Prem just sucked, and then Leicester City was like on insane form, and it kind of like had moments where it petered off, but they still won the league. And that was St. Louis, like to a T. Like they came in high on vibes, like, and they just rode it all season long, while everybody else just had like a weird off season and couldn't compete with them.
The 1 year Tottenham would have won the league.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I wonder if it's going to have the same effect on the West like the Leicester thing did on the Prem. I mean, this is like way too analytical about it, but because that was like right when the Prem had way more heavy investment in the big teams after that, like Man City, Liverpool, all these teams, Chelsea, they just started dumping way more money into their teams because they wanted to never have something like that happen to them again. It was embarrassing for them.
Tim Parker is Wes Morgan.
Yes, sir. Who's their Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante? Who's their Jamie Vardy, actually? You already know, actually. You know who it has to be.
Who's that?
Jared Stroud, dude. Not based on play, but just based on like being annoying to the other team.
My man, though, moved on, though. He got
He's no longer
out.
there. We'll get on to that later. Anyways.
Who is their Riyad Mahrez on? Oh, it's got to be, oh, man, what's his name? The young guy from, was it Seattle? Or no, AZL Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
That guy.
That guy's silky smooth.
Him and
from SKC, I believe.
Him and the other guy from Seattle, who
Samuel Adeniran.
That's the Vardy Mahrez connection of this year. Samuel Adeniran and AZL Jackson.
Respect for that. That's some true MLS sicko names right there.
Ball knowledge.
Yeah. I got them finishing 3rd though. Cincy 3rd.
I can see that.
Jacobs got him 1st. Real original, man.
Moving on. Almost as original as putting this next team first. The Columbus Crew, reigning MLS Cup champions. They just mean business. I mean, not a ton of movement, honestly. They lost Julian Gressel, which was kind of their guy off the bench, right?
Him really only paired with Christian Ramirez, though. Gressel had like 0 impact other than just finding big old Ramirez in the box.
Big guys to cross to.
Yeah, they haven't made too many moves, honestly. One that's kind of an under-the-radar exciting move is signing Derek Jones from Charlotte, who has kind of had some down years, but and he's not young anymore.
The man is killer for me on FM.
I was gonna say the guy has a lot of potential and has had a lot of potential, but just for whatever reason hasn't been able to find it. The only thing that really excites me about this is the fact that he's playing for Wilfred Nancy. And if there's any coach in the league that's going to get the best out of a guy like this, it's going to be Wilfred Nancy. I have so much faith in him as a coach. I feel like you could give him like a lot of these rejected players and he'll just turn them into superstars.
Efrain Alvarez becomes like the best wingback in the league.
I mean, even looking at his numbers from this previous year where he kind of had like a mediocre year, he still had like one of the best pass completion percentages in the league. Pretty good with the ball at his feet, solid at, kind of dribbling through the midfield. He's got a lot of experience in MLS. I mean, despite never being like a nailed-on starter anywhere. Came through at Philadelphia, went to Nashville, went to Houston, went to Charlotte. I think this is a good move that's kind of under the radar that will just kind of strengthen that midfield for Columbus.
I agree. Also, they get Yevgen Sheberko, Ukrainian center back, will probably be depth. They get Marino Heinstroza, a winger from Liga MX in Pachuca. He's 21 years old. So just signing all sorts of depth and promising players that, won't be superstars for them, but will be able to contribute. And like we kind of mentioned with Cincy, just an already stacked roster. So I'm curious to see what this looks like. There was rumors that Mo Farsi was like being looked at in a club in like the UAE. So like that would be interesting. I'm sure they could replace him though, because they have that legitimate Crew 2 team. But one thing, I mean, we'll kind of get to it when we cover Montreal. Do you think Crew 2 and because of that, Columbus Crew's first team is going to be impacted? No pun intended, actually. Is going to be affected by losing their Crew 2 head coach, Laurent Courtois?
I mean, maybe, but I don't know. Like, we only saw him there for 2 years. It was the only 2 years of their existence. And it's one of those like roles where whoever gets hired is going to be kind of an unknown quantity. Nobody's going to know exactly what they're going to bring. What does kind of bring me confidence in that, though, is this club is like really polling in the Wilfred Nancy identity, and they're going to probably hire somebody that identifies with what he likes and how he likes to play. And I don't know. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they start to suffer a little bit, but they've proven that they have really good. They have a really good eye for youth talent, so that doesn't necessarily have to fall just on the coach of Crew 2. That kind of goes down throughout the ranks. That guy's just kind of the last step for them before they make it into the senior team. So I think they'll be impacted a little bit. I just looked up this Hinestroza guy. I'd kind of heard a little bit about him, but I looked up his numbers on FB Ref. This guy looks insane from his time in Liga MX, actually. I don't know. He is going to be pretty electric in a Wilfred Nancy team. Terrible at passing the ball. His numbers for passing over this past year have been terrible, but anything that has to do with dribbling, he has been one of the best, if not the best player in Liga MX. He has the most successful take-ons per 90, most progressive passes recorded. Pass completion percentage is terrible, so he's just trying a lot of progressive passes. He's like in the top 3% of progressive carries and touches in the penalty area. Top 2% of shot creating actions. Top 4% of shots. Top 7% of non-penalty goals. So, I don't know. I think this guy is going to be... It'll be interesting to see what Wilfred Nancy does with a guy like this who I'm assuming... I don't think he's going to take one of those top spots. I don't think he's going to take a spot from Cucho. Knowing Wilfred Nancy, this guy's probably going to get converted to like a right wing back and just be lights out for them up and down the sideline, just taking people on with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, exciting times for the Crew. I mean, you look at Nagby, Diego Rossi, and Cucho Hernandez. That's the top three for me. I'm going number 2 spot in the East.
I'm going number 1. I'm going Supporter Shield winners here. I think they're going to be relentless this year.
The only reason, and I can see it happening, I just feel like we never see that in MLS where the team who has this run where they look unbeatable in the playoffs the year before or something like that, then when it translates to the next regular season, it just never pans out, I feel like. You look at the Toronto...
Unless you're LAFC.
But, I mean, even... Their regular season was pretty disappointing. They got hot. They made it to the MLS Cup and lost. But I just don't think... I think it will get figured out to a degree. I'm not saying they won't be good, but I don't think they're just going to steamroll like we think and, win another cup easily.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be far and above the teams below them, but I do have them winning it kind of marginally within like 2 or 3 points, I'd say. I think it's going to be tight. But I think just the belief that this core group of guys has, especially after that playoff run, is going to be pretty unbeatable. In a regular season where mistakes aren't as crucial, like, when in a cup run where, giving the ball a bad giveaway could end your season, those mistakes aren't going to mean as much for them throughout the year, and they're going to be they should have signed him. I don't know. I think they're going to be electric, and they're going to be fun to watch all year long. And just adding depth, not really losing any key guys other than Gressel, who was kind of just a role player for them, and bringing in a guy who probably isn't as good as passing at Gressel, but is way better on the ball, like dribbling with it. I don't know. I see them doing big things this year.
Fair enough. They want to do big things. This is my transition. They're going to have to get through DC United. DC United.
They're going to have to beat them 5-0.
Backed by new head coach Troy Lesane, who jumped ship from the Red Bulls, crossing a little bit of rivalry action from back in the day. I don't know. I mean, they've had a lot of activity, actually. I don't think it's really enough to push them into a contender. Troy Lesane has talked about the academy. He's excited to be there. They have a new GM who came from Nashville, Ali McKay, and I'm not super hot on DC United. What about some of their moves?
I'm looking at the list, and they just looked at St. Louis and were like, hey, you guys were good. Let us take Lucas Bartlett and Jared Stroud from you. And then other than that, I mean, they brought in Aaron Herrera from Montreal, Cody Mizell from New York City, Christian McVeigh from Inter Miami. Those are kind of their big moves. Matty Peltola, I have no clue about this guy from Finland.
Looks like they spent big on Gabriel Pirani, young player, young Brazilian winger. But you're right. A lot of these moves either more, middle grade starting MLS players or depth or unknown quantities. They didn't get a guaranteed player. One that's interesting, I think, actually, Christian Fletcher, young 18-year-old who went out on loan. He's from their academy. He was a homegrown. Went on loan to the Swansea U21s and, man, tore it up. He had, I don't remember his full stats, but at one point he had 16 goals in about 2 months.
Jeez.
On loan. And he's back with the team. So that's, to me, pretty exciting. A lot of turnover, though, like I said. Leaving, Chris Durkin's gone, Taxi Fontes is gone, Donovan Pines is gone, Andy Nahar, Derek Williams, Ruan, Victor Paulson. I mean, big pieces from their past season, all gone.
I mean, big pieces from a season where they finished in, what? 12th,
not great.
12th place?
Yeah.
40 points.
And I completely agree. These aren't moves that they've made that I think will move the needle. I know you're a big Troy Lesane guy. I'm curious to see what he does, honestly.
I think he'll be good for them in the long run. They just need to give him time. I don't see them finishing higher than they did last year. If anything, I think with how the rest of the conference is strengthened, I think they're going to do worse.
Yeah, I've got them. I don't know. It's tricky because, like I said, unless Troy Lesesne has them in like wooden spoon material, I think they're going to let him build a project here. When you look at Benteke, when you look at, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like their best players, but Benteke and Mateus Klitsch are the only two who leap off the page for me.
Jared Stroud?
No. Steve Birnbaum's a solid center back, but Steve Birnbaum in 2024 not cutting it for you?
Not quite.
Anyway, I got DC United in 13th.
You wouldn't put what's that guy?
Christian Dahome?
No, Di Pietro or Kel Di Pietro. I forget his name.
He'd be
the
up
youngster.
there.
I'd put him in their top 3 because he's pretty elite with his chance creation numbers. I'm putting them at 14th. Not the bottom of the table, but almost there.
Similar vibes for sure.
Yeah.
Next up, I don't even want to cover these guys for long, so let's not. Everybody else will. All the Euro snobs, This
is your favorite team, dude.
This is my least favorite
What are you
team.
talking about?
Inter Miami. And apparently they made some signings. Apparently they've been playing some preseason games, and it's not going too hot for them, honestly. The big moves they made was signing Julian Gressel, signing Luis Suarez. We have differing opinions on
bringing in Israel Boatwright and Tyler Hall.
We have differing opinions on both of their bigger signings, I think. And honestly, I mean, I know preseason tours and stuff are not an indicator of complete success, but that's been a disaster. And for me, I remember last time we were on the pod, I was explaining, I was like, I don't know. I think they're going to get aged out. I think they're going to deal with injuries. I'm just not sure about all this. And I think we're starting to see like hints and smells of that, at least. They had some big departures. Harvey Neville's gone, so what are they going to do?
They don't have any more fourth string right backs now.
In all seriousness, no. Kamal Miller leaves after they had just signed him to an extension, and we were kind of talking about this. They had indicated to him, he was talking about it. He kind of feels a little hard done by listening to an interview with him. He had just signed an extension after the season ended. They wanted to keep him. He said they were talking to him about how excited they were to have like a Canadian player who's going to be representing Canada at the World Cup, like that, is being hosted here. And then he just, after signing that extension, gets traded. Josef Martinez is gone. Nicholas Stefanelli's gone. Christopher McVeigh is gone. And for me, the weakness is in the defense. So obviously they're going to let go 2 of their 3 better center backs. And I don't know, man. What are your thoughts?
I'm a lot higher on this team than you are right now. And I don't know. We've talked about this before. They're not a team that goes out there to try and win games with a lockdown defense. I mean, that's just, if they were, they'd be wasting this opportunity they have right now. I think their whole goal is to go out there and entertain and score a lot of goals and score goals that'll make people reminisce of Barcelona. I mean, you saw it in like that first preseason game against, I think it was Al Hilal, or it was one of their first games. Maybe it was against El Salvador or whatever other
Quite
team.
the tour. 27,000 miles in about 20 days.
But there was like a attempt on goal where they like had this string of like pinged around passes and then like a ball whipped into the box, and Luis Suarez like did like a 15-yard back pass to like Messi, who settled it down to Busquets, and it was just like, it was really fun to watch. It was a fun passage of play to watch. I think that's their goal this year.
I agree. And I think it was the game against Dallas, actually.
Oh, that's right. It was Dallas.
Because I think it was like, yeah. But anyway, I agree with that. I think they will be fun to watch. and then you'll see the end result. They lost to FC Dallas in like a, and that's what I see a lot from them. They'll be entertaining. It's gonna be cool to see all these players, of course. But I can see like when I picture like a Columbus, I can see them just dismantling this team. You know, Messi's not gonna. All these players are not gonna overtly exert themselves, I don't think, to be just treating this like a proper Champions League final or playing to the best of their ability. I think they'll be good. I don't think they're going to steamroll the league. I see them more like middle playoff team. They got Benjamin Kromaski injured. Facundo Farias looks like he'll be gone the entire season. Busquets went off injured with an ankle injury. Messi's been injured on the tour. Suarez and that infamous knee has been injured. And like we see, I just think they're just a bad injury stretch of form away from just having this thing completely derailed, and their most notable player is Jordi Alba and DeAndre Yedlin.
You know what? You got to have some faith, man.
I don't want to have faith. I don't want to have faith. I have an obligation to root against this team.
I do not. I think they'll be fun. I think they'll be exciting. I don't think they're going to be this all-conquering force in the league like everybody believes they are. I mean, similar reasons as to why I don't think Cincy is going to win the conference this year. I think they have too many competitions they're going to play. Too many old bodies in their roster. I agree. There will be injuries, but we've already seen like the league is going to be willing to stretch the rules and just let Miami do whatever they want. So you've already seen it. They've signed a bunch of young Argentinian players that normally would never come to this league. They would normally just skip us and go straight to Europe. And they're still doing it. I mean, there's still 2 weeks left in the season, and basically they could sign any DP caliber player they want and just register them as like a TAM signing or a GAM signing, or just keep it shrouded in fog for nobody to know what's happening. I don't like that about them, but I think the end product is going to be fun, and they're going to have a lot of memorable moments.
For me, this team is just built right now to make as much money as possible. And when you have the most, or at least top 3 most famous people in the entire world, you're going to do that, obviously. It's smart on their end.
Do you think it's bad for the league that they're doing that?
I don't think it's bad for the league, personally. I don't think it helps. No, I'll rephrase it. I do think it helps, because when I see all the attention it's getting, I think it's good. I don't think it really adds to the long-term growth, but I think we have a spike at the moment, and I think maybe a little bit it will help. It might get some eyes who are like, oh, Messi's coming to town. I'm going to watch. And now maybe I'll go to this team stadium and watch them, whereas I normally wouldn't. But it mainly just caters to all the people who don't care about MLS, who just care about Man City, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Arsenal and all those other teams, and who think anytime Messi graces a pitch, like, we should all bow down to him and just anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I agree. And it is annoying, the media coverage for MLS fans like us. But I think for the health of the league, it's going to be good overall. I don't think for people like us it is, but the amount of money they're going to bring in, especially with how many people around the world are going to buy this Apple TV MLS pass, there's going to be so much money just pumped into this league pretty soon. I don't know. I think it'll be good. And with the league growing already kind of naturally, I think this is going to see like a big spike in it, and then it's just going to continue to grow naturally. I don't think there's going to be a fall off in viewership after Messi leaves, of course, but I think there's going to be a lot of people that stick around, and hopefully the league kind of adjusts their roster rules with how much money is going to be coming in for the next year and a half.
You're right. And I don't hate this team. I just don't. I'm kind of rooting for them to fail, if that makes sense. Obviously, I want my own team, Portland, to win, whatever trophy is available. But
I'm almost rooting for them to do well, because I despise like the Ronaldo fanboys online who are saying the Saudi league is better than
you're
MLS.
very anti-Saudi league, which is,
and
I can see.
And I feel like it's going to do a disservice to MLS on the global stage, like view wise, if Miami doesn't do well. I think a lot of people are gonna say the MLS is like a farmers league. Messi didn't care, this and that, and I think a lot of people are gonna like tone it down. I don't know. It's a double-edged sword.
See, I think the opposite actually.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Because if they trash the league, I was gonna say it's so easy, but in the argument of like Saudi league, I mean, we already kind of saw that argument played out with Miami getting trashed by Al Nassr or whatever.
And I think that just proves like they had that amazing Leagues Cup run, but this is not like the greatest MLS team of all time. This is a team that has amazing potential, but
who's better? Who's the greatest?
But is in terms of an MLS team
of all time.
I don't know. I feel like I have to wait to see this play out. If you're going off of last year's Miami, I feel like there's plenty of teams better.
Yeah, they were arguably the worst or bottom 3 team in the league. Messi
I definitely put LAFC from 2022 ahead. I'd put
2019 LAFC.
I'd put them ahead as well. Those Galaxy, like 2012, Robbie Keane, Donovan, Beckham. Yeah. I put those teams ahead.
What about that
Toronto
that trio? Forgetting Messi, Suarez, and Busquets. I want Donovan, Robbie Keane, and Beckham.
I mean, in terms of effectiveness against the teams they were facing at the time, I think it's an easy. If you're gonna do the thing which people I feel like frequently do when they rate these bigger name players who go to MLS, and when we talk about like Steven Gerrard or Drogba or Rooney, and we say like, oh, like, they were all right in MLS, but they didn't tear it up, and everybody's like, that's disrespectful. This is like one of the greatest players who's ever graced your league. It's like, okay, I get that, but he couldn't perform against Kip Keller or Dax McCarty or Alvis Powell.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I agree. It's a double-edged sword. I think you get blowback and praise no matter what happens with this team. So it's a double-edged sword. We'll see. It can go both ways.
For me, I'm not honestly. If you would have told me like 5 years ago, Lionel Messi, and along with that, Alba, Suarez, Busquets, all these players would be playing in MLS, I feel like I would be so excited in my head. But now that it's here, now that little Leagues Cup flash is over and that really big amount of attention they have is done, it's kind of just like, oh, like Miami's playing. Like, I'll tune in, probably more than DC.
Yeah.
But it's not like, wow, I got to watch every single game to see, what Messi did on the bench and how he smiled at some fan.
I agree. I think if it was just Messi and not Messi and co, I think your opinion would probably be different. If it was just Messi and then a bunch of 19-year-old Argentinian like wonder kids that all got signed, everybody would probably view this a little bit different.
So, like how I said, like I don't want to talk about them. We definitely talked about them the most, which is funny. I completely agree. Best players, obviously, you got DeAndre Yedlin, Noah Allen, and Robbie Robinson, maybe Drake Callender.
Where do you have them finishing? They finished in like what 14th last year. There's going to be a substantial jump. That's without a doubt.
It's like I said, actually. It's like I told our buddies. I kind of got called out for this when this first happened. Messi did not fail. He won the Leagues Cup, but why are we hating on Messi? He brought Miami up from 14th to 13th place. No,
and then they went back to 14th and finished there.
Joking aside, I got them in 7th. I think they make the playoffs. I think it'll be kind of similar to like last year. They'll have a tournament, Leagues Cup or Champions Cup. They'll go really hard in, make a deep run, and then injuries and fatigue and jet lag and all those things are going to come into play. They'll make the playoffs, maybe even have a good run in there, but I don't see them finishing super
high. Yeah. I think they'll be too spread thin to be dominant in every competition. I think they'll have to pick one and really sink their resources into it, unless they just keep signing people until, halfway through the season, which is totally plausible for this team. I have them finishing 4th place. I think they'll be not comfortably right in that middle of the pack, but I think they'll be in there, and it'll be like I said, the East is going to be really tight. I think all the way up till the end of this season, last day, I think they're going to be right in there though, 4th place.
I think that's extremely fair. Moving on to CF Montreal. Kind of mention biggest addition. I think we'd agree that could be the most impactful is their coach. Laurent Courtois takes over instead of Hernan Losada. And I was just reading, like, Hernan Losada feels like the rebound after, like, a bad, long breakup with somebody you were with for a long time. You felt really passionate about, like Wilfred Nancy. He was the Montreal boy. Like, it was a nice story. He was successful, and it hurt. So then they get somebody who just is the complete opposite of who Nancy was. Yeah. And then they fired him, and now they have something that seems like a better fit. Laurent Courtois seems like the perfect hire. I really like it. And in terms of additions and subtractions, Aaron Herrera's gone. Romo Kyoto is gone. He's at Tractor in the Persian Gulf Pro League, like we mentioned. Chiniso Ofor, Zachary Gallard is gone. I wasn't a big fan of Montreal's roster last year. This year, Joseph Martinez, one of the most historic strikers in MLS history. How much does he have left in the tank? They got Raheem Edwards is back. Fernando Alvarez comes from Pachuca. Center back seems like a good fit. Mateus Cocaro, center forward from Huracan in the Argentinian league. I think that's going to be the signing that is more impactful than Joseph Martinez. And then Dominik Yankov, attacking midfielder from Ludogorets. So the attack definitely seems to have improved.
Yeah, I would agree. I think definitely the attack has improved, and they definitely improved on the coaching front. Laurent Courtois, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how he does in the top league with a roster that kind of needs to be reworked. I mean, like you already named all the signings. I don't know. I'm so torn on this team because I think it could go either very, very well or very, very not well. But I also, for whatever reason, I think they're going to land right in the middle of that. I think Laurent, it's going to be a very up and down season for them.
I'm rooting for him to do great. I mentioned this before. I love the idea, not the idea, that sounds stupid. I love the identity. I love the culture behind Montreal. Mm-hmm. And it just has not really worked a lot of years for them. I don't think it will this year. Again, as we see about my ranking, but I mean, they got Cocaro, that new center forward, Yankov, and I'd put those two, maybe Matthew Shonray, as their best 3 players. I got them in 12th place, though. And once again, not because I don't think this team has improved. I think they have vastly. I just don't see them ahead of some of these other teams. Actually, I'll put them in 11th. I'm going to change my mind. 11th place for Montreal.
I got them finishing in 9th. In that kind of bubble zone for the playoffs, a play-in game. I just feel like Courtois is going to be able to do something with this squad. And they've only brought in good depth. I mean, they haven't really lost anybody. It's not like last season where they sold all of their best players and then
their coach.
Yeah, and their coach, and then hired a coach who doesn't really fit anything about what their club wants.
Doesn't let their players eat chips on vacation.
Yeah. I think just the atmosphere around Montreal is going to be a lot better this year, and the players they brought in aren't like world beaters by any mean. Maybe that Cocaro guy, but I think they'll be okay. I think they'll do all right. I don't know if they'll make a deep run in MLS playoffs, but who knows? Maybe.
I don't think so. I think a good season for them would be winning the Canadian Championship, making playoffs, like winning a playoff game, and just being more competitive. I think that would be a solid start to building something lasting. I like the Martinez move, Joseph Martinez. He's definitely looks past it. He definitely is not the same player he was, but I think he can still do a job. And in terms of like one of your two strikers or in your forward rotation, I think you could do a lot worse. I think it's high risk, but also could have high upside.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I feel like they'll finish in the playoff spot, but I completely agree with you. They might drop off into that kind of on the bubble, like almost in the play-in games. Who do we got next, though?
Dirty Nashville. Nashville SC. You already know what they're going to do. They got Gary Smith, assistant coach Steve Guppy, and they're going to play their defensive game. Not a lot of...
Do they continue to play a defensive game even though Hani Mukhtar has come out against it like the past 2 years?
I don't know, man. I think so. I don't see any reason why Gary Smith wouldn't. That was kind of his thing in Colorado, too, like decade and a half ago. In terms of departures, Jan Gregus, Fafa Pico, Ethan Zubak, Dax McCarty's the main one, honestly.
That's a tough one to lose.
And Fafa Pico was like a good, rotational, started a lot of games, winger for them. Additions, not a ton. They got Drew Yearwood from the Red Bulls, decent center mid, Amar Sadish from Atlanta. They got Mackenzie Gaines from Charlotte, right wing player. He's 25. I mean, that's more depth in my opinion. Tyler Boyd from the LA Galaxy, though, I think is their best move.
That's the standout one for sure. That is the closest thing Nashville's going to get to a blockbuster move.
And I think that's a really good move because getting a threat out wide, another threat alongside Mukhtar was really good. I wasn't really a big fan of his signing at the Galaxy. I thought he was kind of past it, honestly.
Yeah.
But he kind of proved me wrong, I feel like. And when he left the Galaxy, when it was announced he was traded, he talked about how he put his all for the club. He played through injury and stuff. So this guy's going to buy in, and it fits with their they love their domestic American-based player model.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Sam Surridge, if he has a really good second year, along with Mukhtar, and you have Tyler Boyd in there, that's 3 decent threats. We'll see if it happens.
Those are the big 3 for them, without a doubt. But I think the loss of Dax McCarty, Fafa Picault, I think Tyler Boyd kind of fills that hole and then some for the Fafa Picault, loss or departure or whatever you want to call it. But I think this is a team that's getting stale, and the league has kind of found them out. Hani Mukhtar, like I said, he's come out for the second year in a row and just blatantly said, we need to figure out how to control the ball, not always play against the ball, which I'm kind of curious. Who do you think's bigger for Nashville, him or the coach? If it came down to it and Hani Mukhtar was either you get rid of him or I go.
I can see them sticking with Mukhtar. I don't know if it'll get to that point because as far as I know, it seems like they have, he's made those comments, but he's been pretty professional as opposed to a Joseph Martinez who's throwing catered tables of rice and making worse statements. But I know what you mean. It feels like that Leagues Cup final run was their chance. I really wish they would have pulled that off, especially at home.
You just hate Miami, dude.
No, I think
then we wouldn't have Miami in the CCC.
I think that would have been a really special with Messi in the house victory for them. And now
I think Messi would have stayed on the field and watched the trophy lift, just sat there and taken in the moment, the defeat, and let it fuel him for this year.
Right. The one trophy that's eluded him. The defense is solid as always. Lovitz, Jack Marr, Zimmerman, Shackmore. One of the best back lines in the league. I didn't realize, off the top of my head, their fixation of former Red Bulls midfielders. Sean Davis is directly replacing Dax McCarty, which is the exact same thing that happened at New York Red Bulls. Backing him up, now they have Drew Yearwood, who's the former Red Bulls center mid. And then they got Alex Moyle, who is another Red Bulls midfielder. So, I don't know. Nashville.
Where do you have them finishing? Where'd they finish last year? They finished in the playoff spots, just barely above the bubble. They were in 7th place on 49 points. Where do you have them finishing?
I got 5th. And
better season than last year.
Yes, I don't think they'll make it far in the playoffs. I just think having a good, solid, foundational defense and like system can take you a long way in MLS in this chaotic, crazy league. And I think it'll be another one of those years where Nashville's good, they have a good stretch, but they're never unbeatable, and they kind of just make the playoffs and then don't do a whole lot.
Yeah, I could see that. I have them in 11th. I think they've been found out. I think this team is past it. I don't know, man. It's just, for me, it's like the most boring style of soccer to watch. I mean, it's just...
I don't disagree. And I can see this happening,
and
too, I will say.
It's just excruciating to watch. And Hani Mukhtar is completely right. This team needs to figure out how to control the ball and play with the ball, because they're completely at the whim of the first goal of a game. If they get scored on, they are just absolutely useless. They have no way of like posing a real threat to other teams.
You're right. For me, this can be an either-or team. It can kind of teeter-totter.
Yeah.
If Mukhtar is incredible and MVP level again, like I could see them being lights out.
Which does he do it 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row? I mean,
yeah. And
at what point does he start to fall off?
And he definitely cooled off post Leagues Cup. If Zimmerman or Jack Marr goes down with a long-term injury, like it's another thing. If their defense isn't solid, they don't have much. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think they'll have an off season this next year. Who do we got next?
Another one of my favorites. Columbus. New England Revolution.
You almost had a little slip there. You almost let out the truth.
Let out the truth. But I don't know. This is a team I'm a fan of. And obviously, head coaching change. They had a really unfortunate year last year. They've been solid for the last few years. They have that whole fiasco with Bruce Arena go down. And I know a lot of fans feel hard done by it because finally when they're successful, I mean, they made 5 MLS Cups and lost them all. But when they've been more successful recently, they have this terrible thing happen. They get Caleb Porter, who has his ups and downs, but he knows how to win. What do you think about them before I get into some of these?
If they're going to win a trophy, it's got to be this year or next year, because Caleb Porter's he'll win a trophy everywhere he goes, but it's got to be the first or second year. And then after that, it's
you gotta
downhill.
accept a year of not making the playoffs if you want his MLS Cup.
And the year after you